Okay. So before I get started on the reconstitutions, on the chapter 10 and 11 homework, the oral dosages and the injection dosages. Do y'all have any questions over any of those? Y'all find any mistakes, any errors?
The only problem I had was the one that said something about teaspoons. How many teaspoons? I kept getting it wrong.
It could have been the way you entered it. Did you use 5 milliliters per teaspoon? Okay. It may have been the way you entered it. How many teaspoons did you get?
I got 2.
Okay. That's a good possible number. I don't remember what the answer was, but I'll look at it. But you used the right conversion, so you should be okay. What did you use for the abbreviation?
Well, for the first attempt, I did the TSP, and I got it wrong, and so I just wrote out teaspoon.
Okay. Should have used, the TSP was right. So it could have been spacing. It could have been that you had the wrong dose anyway, that you did the math wrong. But I'll look at it. I'll always look at all the incorrect ones, because it can be anything from, if you write out the word teaspoon, in these problems, always use the abbreviation. But if you make it plural, if you use TSPS, teaspoons, then it'll count it wrong because they're not supposed to be plural. And same thing with tablets and capsules. They're supposed to be singular. Even if you're giving 5 or 2 or 3, it's all still supposed to be singular. So you can say it plural, but the writing is singular. I think they're on there. Yeah. Okay. Good morning. Can everybody see the chapter 12 handout?
It's showing on this screen.
Okay. All right, so we'll get started then. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. All right, with reconstitutional solutions, what we have, and always it's you have dry powdered or you have a real thick solution, okay? And if you have the dry powder, you've got to, in the solution too, you're going to add so much water, so much diluent. A lot of time it's sterile water. Sometimes it's a different type of diluent. We're not going to worry about the type of diluent we're going to use. We're just worried about how much diluent. Because all we're worried about in this class is the calculations. But I always use the example of making Kool-Aid. And then somebody else yesterday said, they didn't make Kool-Aid, they don't like Kool-Aid. But, okay, you don't like Kool-Aid? I don't know what else I come up with. But Kool-Aid comes in a powder package, right? I mean, most people have made Kool-Aid. I won't make the assumption that everybody's made Kool-Aid. My kids loved it. I hated it. But I made Kool-Aid for them. I don't know what that was. But it comes in a powder package. And to reconstitute it or to make it drinkable, you have to add so much water. All right, so and it tells you how much water. What happens if you don't follow the directions? If it says give, I used the example 2 cups, and I realized 2 cups was not nearly enough. Say 6 cups of water. The directions say add 6 cups of water. What happens if you don't follow the directions and you add 8 cups of water? You get a very weak Kool-Aid, wouldn't you? You've added more water than necessary. What if you only added 2 cups of water? You get a very strong, thicker liquid, right? So we have to find the directions on a medication label or in our drug resource guide that tells us how much diluent to add for these. A lot of times it's in the fine print. Sometimes, like I said, it's in a drug guide. But I will always give you, it'll either be on the label or I will give you the information from the drug guide, from the package insert. So you'll always have that information available. You'll just have to be able to locate it because it'll be in different spots. Then if you've got the real thick liquid, and some of them come in and are real concentrated liquid, I should say. Anybody ever made the frozen orange concentrate, the cans of orange juice, and where you add, I think it's 1 can of orange juice and your 2 or 3 cans of water? Okay, that's what you're doing. That orange juice is very concentrated, and if you thaw it out and not add any water to it, it's very strong. And if you add, the more water you add to it, the weaker it is. The less water you add to it, the stronger it is. So that's, the same thing. When you have a liquid and you're having to dilute it, you're just making it a weaker amount, okay? You don't want to give because sometimes if you give a full concentration, especially these thick liquids, you won't be able to get it through the needle, for one thing. For another, it could burn the veins in your arms or their legs, or it could cause damage. Do you have to liquefy, or I lost the word I wanted to use. You have to dilute it. All right, so if we look at this first one, it's erythromycin, 400 milligrams IV daily times 2 days. So you're just giving it for 2 days. And we're looking, in all of these questions, we're really starting with 1 dose. What is 1 dose of this medicine? And I've got this circled. I'm going to try to zoom it in a little bit more. Oh, that source. Zoom, hit the right key, and I might get it there. So if we look right in here, it says constitute to 100 milligrams per milliliter. This 100 milligrams per milliliter is what's called our supply dose. That's our dosage strength over our dosage form. This 500 milligrams here, this is our concentration, or our dosage strength. It's not our dosage strength. It's our concentration. I don't know which one to write with. So this is the total amount of medicine or medication in the vial. So if we have that whole vial, it's 500 milligrams. If it's in powder form, if it's in the concentrated liquid form, there's still 500 milligrams in that total vial. Once we add all of our diluent, then it will be 100 milligrams per milliliter. So then it shows, if we keep still reading in that circle, it says constitute to the 100 milligrams per milliliter 4.8 milliliters of sterile water for injection. Yes, ma'am, question? Huh? Yeah. You don't have to ask, just...
I thought, but I didn't want to just be reading.
Nah, you're fine. All right, so we're going to add 4 milliliters of diluent. And it tells us it's sterile water for injection. So then, going down here to add my, answer my questions, how much diluent will you add? You're going to add 4.8 milliliters. Okay, so that's just as simple as can be. What's the resulting supply dosage? That's what's in the circle. It's 100 milligrams per milliliter. Okay? It's not our concentration. It's not the total medication in the vial. But it's our supply dosage. It's what it's going to constitute to what it's going to be after we add the water, add the diluent. All right, so what is the resulting total volume? And I just drew a huge blank. And I know how to do this. Oh, okay. So the resulting volume, it's going to be in milliliters. I'm going to take the total amount of medication. It's going to go over 1 times the form over the dose. So the supply dose. And I'm going to get over here into that. So medication is the 500 milligrams. And then my form is the milliliters. It's per 1 milliliter. And it's 100 milligrams per milliliter. So my dose is 100 milligrams. And then my milligrams is going to cancel. I've got 2 zeros on top, 2 zeros on bottom. They'll cancel and that leaves me with 5/1. Or most of y'all can do 500 divided by 100. I'm going to end up with 5 milliliters. So my total volume is the 5 milliliters. And then we have how many full doses are in the vial. So the full doses is going to equal my doctor's orders over 1 No, I'm doing that backwards, sorry. I'm doing the total medication in the vial. And I'm going to divide it by my doctor's order. It's been almost a year since I've taught. Well, it's been since last spring since I've taught this. Yeah. So it's your total medication divided by your doctor's order. So if you look at your label, your total medication, again, is the 500 milligrams. Bless y'all. And then your doctor's order is 400 milligrams, not worrying about the 2 days, okay? I want to know how many total, or how many full doses. So I'm going to divide this by 400 milligrams. My zeros count, cancel, my milligrams cancel. I have 5/4. Put that in your calculator, you're going to get 1.25. But I want to know full doses. So do I worry about that 0.25? So I have 1 full dose. The hardest part with this one is knowing all the different little formulas and where you put all your information. And then the one you should know how to do, how many milliliters will you give? And again, how many milliliters will you give for 1 dose? Calculating how much we're going to give. So I'm going to put that on this paper again. So how much are we going to give? We're looking for milliliters. Again, this is where we use our doctor's order. This is just like chapters 10 and 11, times our form over our dosage strength. The form over our dosage strength, this is what we call our supply dosage. So you'll hear me refer to that a lot. So if you look at your label, or not your label, if you look at your doctor's orders, we're giving the 400 milligrams. So I'm doing 400 milligrams 1 times, and then our supply dosage is 100 milligrams per milliliter. Okay, it's what's written in this fine print. Again, the 500 milligrams is the concentration, so we don't want it. We want our supply dosage. So 100 milligrams per milliliter. My form is milliliters. My dosage strength is 100 milligrams. Okay. Then just like we've been doing, milligrams cancel, my zeros cancel. I'm left with 4/1. So I'm giving 4 milliliters for one dose. There's a lot to take in on these, but this part E is what we've been doing for 2 chapters. Okay, we're just looking at it differently. If I start well, I couldn't start out with that, but okay. Questions yet? Okay, let's look at number 2. The order is ampicillin, 500 milligrams IM every 6 hours for a patient with pneumonia. Okay, so my order is the 500 milligrams IM. All right, I've got to check my label. It's an ampicillin for injections. It's for IM or IV use, so we're good. It's equivalent to 1 gram of ampicillin. So again, this is my concentration out here, or my total medication, whatever you want to call it. That's the 1 gram. So then I'm going to over here and I'm going to look. I'm giving it IM, so I'm going to look. It says for IM use, you're adding 3.5 milliliters of diluent. So my milliliters of diluent is 3.5. And what's the resulting supply dosage? Well, if we keep reading, its resulting solution contains 250 milligrams of ampicillin per milliliter. So my supply is 250 milligrams per milliliter. So then I'm going to write for 250 milligrams per milliliter. Now, why do you think the resulting volume is matters? Is of importance? Why do you think we have to know that? Right dosages in milligrams or milliliters? Okay. Well, knowing I think I know where you're going with that. So I think you're on the right track. You're just not wording it like I want it. So you're that's part of the reason. But what happens if when we work this out and I have to give 6 milliliters, and you can, you can't in an IM, but if I was giving an IV and I needed 6 milliliters, but when I worked out my total volume, I only had 5 milliliters in that vial. I wouldn't have enough to give it, right? So needing the resulting volume is to make sure that when I have enough medication in that vial to give the number of milliliters I need to give. Did that make sense to you all? Somewhat. All right, so let's look at the resulting volume. So again, it's our total medication, which our total medication, in this case, is the 1 gram over 1, and it's times our supply dose. So 1 milliliter over 250 milligrams. So I've got 1 gram, 250 milligrams. I've got to do a conversion, right? So 1,000 milligrams, 1 gram. Now, honestly, if y'all know that there's 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram, and you want to change this 1 gram to 1,000, as long as it's 1 gram, that's okay. If not, do the little conversion if you're not comfortable with it. So now I have 1,000 over 250. I can cancel 0, so I have 100 divided by 25. That gives me 4 milliliters. So I have 4 milliliters total. And notice, I'm adding 3.5 milliliters. but I have a resulting 4 milliliters in the bottle. Where's that extra 0.5 coming from? No guesses. What happens when you add just enough water to something to not dissolve it completely? It's going to thicken, right? So if I don't, what I'm doing is this 3.5 milliliters is not dissolving all that medication completely. It just makes it a very thick, I mean, it'll dissolve. I shouldn't say it won't dissolve completely, but it won't completely liquefy. It'll just become a thicker solution. It's like that oral suspension. It becomes thicker. So it's going to increase my volume in the vial. All right, I'm not going to worry about the full doses this time. That's not all that important unless, you're giving it, we'll do it a couple of times more. But, so how many milliliters will I give? Do I need the 3.5 milliliters or the 4 milliliters to know how many milliliters I'm going to give? This I don't. I need the 3.5 to know how many milliliters I've got to put to make the concentration of 250 milligrams per milliliter. The 4 milliliters I need to make sure I'm going to have enough milliliters in that vial to be able to give the doctor's orders. So I really need, again, my doctor's orders and the supply dosage, my dosage form over my dosage strength. So my milliliters, I'm giving 500 milligrams for my doctor's orders over 1. And then my dosage strength is 1 milliliter per 250 milligrams, or my supply dosage. I said that backwards. My milligrams cancel. How many milliliters am I going to give? 2. 500 divided by 250 is 2. I can cancel a 0 on top and a 0 on bottom. I get 50 divided by 25. I still get 2 milliliters. So do I have enough in this vial to give 2 milliliters? Yeah, I could actually get 2 doses out of this vial, right? Technically. Because I've got 4 milliliters in the vial. So technically I could give 2 milliliters. I mean, 2 milliliter injections. I can see y'all are still struggling with this.
So all the other information is just reference information only.
Right.
So it's not, I won't use any of that to figure out how much to do.
You will use B. You will use the B because that's your supply dosage or your dosage form over your dosage strength. Once it's been reconstituted. Okay, that's the one we need. So A and C are just references. But it's things you got to know, things you've got to be able to pick out. Let's look at number 3. So I've got ampicillin, 375 milligrams, IM every 6 hours. So if we look at our label, we're going to look under the 4 IM use, okay, because I'm given an IM. How many milliliters of diluent do I need to add? 1.8 milliliters. You make sure, even though I'm saying, okay, the question says how much diluent. If I say how many milliliters of diluent or something, make sure you put that milliliters with it. All right, then keep reading. What's my resulting supply dosage? What is the dose that's going to result to? Yeah, the 250 milligrams per milliliter. All right. So before, to keep you from getting more confused, instead of looking at the resulting volume in the full doses, let's look at how many milliliters we're going to give first. Okay? So you've got the information. Our order is 375 milligrams. So how many milliliters will you give? And remember, we're looking at 1 dose. So the information you need is on the screen. So 1.5, I gotta do the math, hang on. I'm slow sometimes because I hide my calculator from me. 375 divided by 250. Yeah, I got 1.5 milliliters. And there's how I set it up. Okay. So I'm adding 1.8 milliliters of diluent. That should tell me that I'm going to have enough milliliters to give, or enough fluid. How do I want to say that? There should be enough volume in the vial to give the medication, right? But let's look at what is my total volume. Okay. So again, we're looking for milliliters. It's a total medication, and this one's got a total medication of what? 5 milligrams. I think y'all just need to wake up a minute. And then it's times my dosage. So my 1 milliliter over 250 milligrams. So my milligrams cancel. What's my total volume? 2 milliliters. Because the zeros will cancel and I have 50 divided by 25. I have 500 divided by 250, still 2. Okay. So how many full doses are in the vial? Okay. This is where, again, I take my total medication, which is 500 milligrams. I'm going to divide it by my doctor's orders of 375 milligrams. The key is I want full doses. And I could almost look at that without doing the calculator. How many full doses am I going to have? 1. Could I also look at the 1.5 milliliters I'm going to give and the 2 milliliter total volume and know I'm only going to be able to give 1 dose?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you can look at this information different ways. It doesn't always have to be calculated, the total medication divided by the doctor's orders. You can look at what you're giving and the total volume in the vial. Okay. And a lot of times you can look at it, especially if it's 1 dose, just 1 full dose, you can look at it and say, oh, that's just 1 full dose. I don't have to do the calculations on it. All right. All right, so here I have erythromycin. Erythromycin and Zithromax is the same medication. Of course, it tells me that it's erythromycin in the generic form. So how many, and that's hard to read, I understand. How many milliliters am I going to give to dilute? How much diluent am I going to add? 4.8? 4.8 milliliters. What is my resulting dosage strength or supply dosage?
$100 milligrams.
100 milligrams per milliliter, 1 milliliter. And you can find it here, 100 milligrams per milliliter. But if you look, each milliliter contains equivalent to 100 milligrams. So it's on there twice, actually. All right, so let's skip C and D for a moment. How much are you going to give for one dose? How much are you going to give?
Milliliters?
It's okay. You're going to use the 0.5 grams, right? Am I going to use the 500 milligrams, or am I going to use the 100 milligrams per milliliter?
1 milligram per
Right. And so I've got the 0.5 grams, 1 milliliter over 100 milligrams, and then since I got grams and milligrams, I did my conversion. Now I've got 2 zeros on bottom, so I canceled 2 zeros on top. 0.5 times 10 is the 5 milliliters. Okay. So I'm adding 4.8, I'm giving 5. Am I going to have enough? Probably, but what happens if it doesn't add the volume? Let's check it to be on the safe side, okay? So, even because the diluent is less than what I'm giving, so let's check and make sure. So, it's my total medication over 1 times my supply dosage, the form over the strength. So my milligrams cancel. 500 divided by 100 is the 5 milliliters. So I'm going to have just enough, right? So to have the full doses I'm going to have is I'm going to have 1 full dose. So do you seem to be catching on a little bit? I had 2 number 4s on this one. I gotta zoom out. So I've got methylprednisolone, 175 milligrams IV, and it's daily. So how much diluent will I add? Do I need to zoom it back in to see the diluent? Eight milliliters. Because it says reconstitute with 8 milliliters, and it tells you it's, I can't say that this morning. Bacter, I don't know, spectrostatic water. So I'm giving 8 milliliters. So what is my supply dosage?
62.5 milligrams per milliliter.
62.5 milligrams per milliliter, and it's right here. And then this gives you a place that tells, and on these, when you're reconstituting something, you've got to put a label on the bottle when you reconstitute it. And that's in the reading in chapter 12. That you'll have to put the date it was reconstituted, the time it was reconstituted, your initials and your licensure, and the day, because some of these are only good for like 7 days, some of them are only good for like so many hours, 24 hours. So you'll have to put the date and the time also. If it's good for like 24 hours, you'll put the, well, You know, you put the day, the next day. If it's good for 7 days, then you figure out what the expiration date is on it. So that's in the chapter 12 reading. All right, so how many milliliters are we going to give? I don't know if I can get it all back on there or not. The order was 175 milligrams, and we're giving 62.5 milligrams per milliliter. Two point eight. Everybody agree with her? So 2.8 milliliters. So more than likely, I'm going to have enough volume, right, to give the 2 milliliter dose. But let's double check it just to make sure. Okay. So what am I going to start with to double check this? The total meds, which is 500 milligrams, right? And then what am I going to multiply it by? Yeah, the supply, the 1 milliliter over 62.5 milligrams. So if I take 500 divided by 62.5, I get 8 milliliters. Generally, when you add anything over 5 milliliters, it's going to dissolve it completely. And it's not just going to make it thicken, but it'll make it more liquid. And you'll have the same amount of milliliters that you added will be your total volume. Okay? There's rare cases when it's not. Okay. All right. So on number 5, ceftriaxone, I want you to figure out the A, B, and E. Okay? Without me saying anything, I want you to try A, B, and E. Does everybody have it?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. I won't move it then.
Is the supply dose 350 per one or 100 milligrams per one?
Okay. Which are you giving?
Never mind. It's ID.
Yeah. That was a really good question. Because I was waiting on somebody to mention that. You've got to look at your doctor's orders to see what you're giving to determine the number of dilute and how much diluent and how your supply dosage is. So if you looked and did the IM and then were given an IV, you're not in the boat alone. You aren't the only one to do it. Okay. I'm going to move this up because remember we're giving an IV injection. So the diluent was 4.8 milliliters. My resulting supply is 100 milligrams per milliliter. And then I'm going to give 7.5 milliliters. Does everybody agree with me? Now it says how much diluent will you add? I'm adding 4.8 milliliters. Is there going to be enough to give the 7.5 milliliters? Think we might ought to check it? Yeah, let's check it. This is my total medication, right? Times the supply dose. How many milliliters total volume do I have? 5. So, and I don't, this is where being a not being a nurse, I wouldn't know how to answer, well, what would I do? Do you get 2 vials and use, a little bit out of another vial? You mix 2 vials? Or do you look and see if you have a bigger vial? That's something you learn in the nursing department, or in the nursing program. But this is one of the reasons that we check it, because sometimes we're giving more than what the vial has. And, let's just say that you find out that you can pull from 2 different vials. And you'd know then that, I've got to pull 2 different vials off the shelf and mix it instead of 1. Or I need to go and get a bigger vial because there's not enough in this. And you want to do all of this before you mix it. Because again, some of these medications are only good. There's one medication we do somewhere in a problem that's only good for 4 hours on the shelf after it's been reconstituted. So you don't want to fix a vial and then realize, there's not enough volume in that vial for me to give this medication. Okay? I'm not going to worry about the full doses. I think that just complicates matters more. On some of these. Now, we'll look at that later. Okay. Now, those were all single dosage strengths, right? It told you that you're adding so much diluent and you're going to have a resulting volume. This one is penicillin G potassium. It's called Pfizer. But it's penicillin G potassium. It's for injection. It has a total of 1 million units in the package. Okay? And what it tells you over here on this side, and I'll zoom this in. Is that if I were to add 20 milliliters of diluent, so this side is all my diluent, then I'm going to have so many units per milliliter. Okay, so if I added 20 milliliters, because these are 2.0, I don't like this on this one, but it's what it is, then I'm going to have 50,000 units per milliliter. That would be my supply dosage. Okay? A lot of people wants to read this that I'm going to add 20 milliliters of diluent. I'm going to get 50,000 milliliters per 20 milliliters. 50,000 units per 20 milliliters. It's units per 1 milliliter on these. So if I add 10 milliliters, I'm going to have 100,000 units per milliliter. Okay. If I add 4 milliliters, then I'm going to have 250,000 units per milliliter. If I add 1.8 milliliters, I'm going to have 500,000 units per milliliter. All right. Everything is calculated the same way, but we have to determine which one, how much diluent to add that's going to best fit the order. All right. So my order is 100,000 units. So which one of these would be the best one to use? And you can use more, it can go, you can use any of them because they will get you, when we calculate it, you'll still be given 300,000 units. So, question?
Oh, no, we were making a comment.
Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at these, and we're going to look at each one kind of individually. All right, so I've got this set up. If we add the 20 milliliter diluent, what's my resulting supply dose? So 20 milliliters, I had 50,000 units per milliliter. Okay, I'm not going to worry about the resulting volume at the moment. How many milliliters am I going to give? Okay, that's what we've been doing for 2 chapters. So my doctor's orders is 300,000 units over 1, and then my 1 milliliter over my 50,000 units. This is where canceling the zeros come in real handy, because I have 4 here. I can cancel 4 up there. I'm not having to put 8 extra zeros in my calculator. So now I have 30 over 5. Can we do 30 over 5 in our head? 5 times what gives me 30? 6. So I'm going to be given 6 milliliters. Okay. Then we're going to look at the 10 milliliter. The resulting dosage, if I add 10 milliliters of diluent, is 100,000 units. So, nothing milliliters is there. I have 100,000 units per milliliter. So again, I'm going to skip C and D for right now. How many milliliters am I going to give? The doctor's order hasn't changed. It's still 300,000 units. My supply is 1 milliliter over 100,000 units. So my units cancel. I can cancel 5 zeros and 5 zeros. So now I have 3 over 1. And I'm going to give 3 milliliters. Okay. So y'all do the 4 milliliters and the 1.8 milliliters. Okay. Do the 4 milliliter and the 1.8 milliliter. Just do the A, B, and E. Okay, we're ready to look at it? How many milliliters, first I'm just going to ask, how many milliliters are you going to give with the 4 milliliters diluent? If you're adding 4 milliliters of diluent, how many milliliters of medication will you give? 1.2? Oops, let's see. 1.2. And then how much will you give if you're adding 1.8 milliliters of diluent? 0.6. So with an IM injection, the most you're supposed to give is 3 milliliters in the thighs, or in the hip. I think it's 2 milliliters in the. So how many? I should say, which one would be the best solution to use? How do I want to ask that? How much diluent would be the best to use? The 4.8 or the 1.8?
1.8.
1.8 would be a good one because you're only giving 0.6 milliliters. But if I'm giving, how about if I add 10 milliliters of diluent, I'm giving a maximum of 3 milliliters, right? So, and remember, the less diluent you add, the thicker your medication is. So, again, that's something, I don't care which one you use when you figure these on the test or on the homework, as long as if you choose the 4 milliliters, you use the right supply dosage, okay? So as long as you're choosing, I'm adding 4 milliliters of diluent, I'm going to use 250 milliliters, or 250 units per milliliter. And you calculate it that way. You show me what you're using. You can use any of them because you will be giving the doctor's order of 300,000 units. Okay? Alright. Now, sometimes I don't know if I have questions or not. You'll have to speak up if you have them. Let's go back up here. What's the resulting volume? 20 milliliters. What would be your guess? It's 20 milliliters. Okay? Because I had 1 million units, I'm giving 50,000 units per milliliter. So I would have my resulting volume is 20 milliliters. And I'm just going to tell you these. The 10 milliliters, I'm going to have 10 milliliters of volume. Now the 4 milliliters, I think it's 4 milliliters, but I'm going to work it just to make sure. I have 1 million units over 1 times 1 milliliter over 250,000. I should have done this one in my head, as I can cancel 4. So I have 1,000 divided by 25. 200. Yeah, because I didn't cancel enough. 3, 4. Yeah, that's 100. I can't read right. So 100 divided by 25, and I have 4 milliliters. Then with the 1.8, I still have the 1 million units, and I have 500,000 is my supply. So I have 5 zeros, 5 zeros. 10 divided by 5 gives me 2 milliliters. Also, you can see that. Okay. So questions? This one you're going to have to do some thinking on, right? Still got a little bit of time. We're getting into the time or the chapters that it takes most of the class period to work out. All right, so I have an order for ceftriaxone of 400 milligrams. It's ceftriaxone for injection. I'm given an IV, and it says for IV administration, see package insert. So here's my package insert. So in my package insert, it says for IV or for intravenous administration, ceftriaxone for injection, USP, should be administered intravenously by infusion over a period of 30 minutes. A lot of this information we'll need later on, but we don't need all of this today. Concentrations between 10 milligrams and 40 milligrams per milliliter are recommended. However, lower concentrations may be used if desired. Reconstitute vials with an appropriate IV diluent. After reconstitution, each 1 milliliter of solution contains 100 milligrams. So there's my supply. Withdraw entire contents and dilute to the desired concentration. So what I have here is more, oops, wrong button. It's a vial dosage size, okay? If I have a 250 milligram vial, I'm going to add 2.4 milliliters. So, I'm not going to choose one of these to add to the vial. I have to look at my vial size. And I have a 1 gram vial. So I'm going to go over here and look at my 1 gram and realize I'm going to add 9.6 milliliters. So how much diluent would I add? I'm adding 9.6 milliliters. And then what's my resulting supply dosage? 100 milligrams per milliliter. All right. So how much are we going to give? Let's get C and D. How much are we going to give? And remember, that's our doctor's orders, and our doctor's order was 400 milligrams times our supply, which is the 1 milliliter over 100 milligrams. Zeros on bottom, I can cancel 2 zeros on top. So 4 divided by 1 is 4 milliliters. And that's an IV, so I can give 4 milliliters. If I'm adding the 9.6 milliliters of diluent, am I going to have enough to give the 4 milliliters? More than likely, I'm not going to have to worry about it. Okay, so questions? All right, let's look at number 8. And I'm going to let y'all do number 8. I'll zoom it in. But you got an order for 500,000 units, IM. And you've got to choose your diluent. Or your diluent amount. Try to get it all where it can stay. Kind of read sideways there a little bit. And y'all choose the one you want to choose. Don't worry about anybody else. Whoa, go back there. Y'all are just gonna have to write down the 500,000 units or ask when you get there. Excuse me. Did anybody choose the 2 milliliter or the 18.2 milliliters of diluent? Okay, let me ask it this way. What did y'all choose?
I chose the 8.2.
The 8.2?
8.2.
Okay, how many milliliters are you going to give?
1.
1? Anybody else get that one? All right, what'd somebody else choose? Y'all are not talkative.
You're frozen on this one. Like,
Okay. It's okay. Put a person on the spot and they'll freeze every time. So if we chose 18.2 milliliters, we have 250,000 units per milliliter. Okay? So I'm going to give the 500,000 units over 1, and then 1 milliliter over 250,000 units. So the units cancel. I got 4 zeros. I can cancel 4 zeros. So I got 50 over 25, which is 2 milliliters. Okay? I've got more colored pens than just one. So when you choose those that chose the 8.2 milliliters, you're giving 500,000 units per milliliter. And that was probably the best one because my order was 500,000 units. But it doesn't have to be the one you give. So 1 milliliter over 500,000 units. So I can cancel all the zeros. Have 5 divided by 5. I have 1 milliliter. Then if I chose the 3.2 milliliters, I have 1 million units. So still have the 500,000 the doctor ordered. I'm going to have the 1 milliliter over 1 million. So my units will cancel. I have 5 zeros on top, so I cancel 5 zeros on bottom, which gives me 5 over 10, or 0.5 milliliters. So no matter which one you chose, and you come up with the right answer, either the 2 milliliters, 1 milliliter, or half a milliliter, you're still going to get the 500,000 units. Okay, you're just going to give it in a smaller amount of medication. I probably would have chose the 500,000 or the 8.2 milliliters because it was 500,000 units per milliliter, same as what the doctor ordered. Easy to figure. Okay. Right. So I've got 9 and 10 on back. And I'm gonna let you guys work on those. I'll open it here shortly. The solutions to this worked out, even for the number of full doses and how to figure out your resulting volume. So, a total volume, rather. So, read chapter 12 if you need to. Read chapter 13 before next week, because it's a little more on the, I'm not going to call it complicated, because it's not. We're still using the same process, but we're adding a step or two, okay? And we have to look at things a little bit more different, because it's pediatric dosages by weight. So we're adding some things to what we're already doing. All right, so it gets a little complicated, and in fact, we're adding more to it. Okay. So questions on anything? There will be a homework for chapter 12, because I'm a firm believer the more practice you do, the better you are at being able to see it in your mind and do it in your head, and the better you become at it. Even if it's not perfect practice, imperfect practice still helps you in that you can go back and find your mistakes. Okay? All right, I will see you guys on Monday. No, Thursday. Today is Tuesday. I went home early yesterday and lost today.